What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Level Up podcast, where you learn how to go from agent to entrepreneur. And we've got a phenomenal guest with us today that's done exactly that. And we will bring him in a second. We've got Aaron Rian, the founder of the Rian Group, whose team last year did 689 sides. And we're going to talk about exactly how he did it, how he's built up his team, how he's running a virtual team that's actually prospecting and lead generation based without having everybody come into the same physical office and being able to hold them accountable in person. So we've got a lot of cool stuff to jump into today. First of all, Greg Harrelson. Greg, how are you today?
Doing great, man. I'm excited to be here. It feels like we haven't been together for a while, but I'm sure that's just me keeping busy. So I'm excited to learn about Aaron and see what he's got going on. He's got some impressive numbers. So yeah. I hope our audience has a pen and paper, or at least taking notes on an iPad.
That's right. So Aaron, just wanted to officially welcome you and kind of give people a sense of where you're at and what your team looks like.
Fantastic, guys. Well, appreciate you guys having me here today. So we're based out of Portland, Oregon. Have agents essentially in all the major markets in Oregon and Washington. So Salem, Medford, Bend, Spokane, Washington, Seattle, Tacoma. We're all over the place. So if you look at a map of Oregon and Washington and see a major metropolitan area, we probably have an agent there.
Gotcha. And so you've got, how was it, 28 agents total spread out across that?
Yep.
How many are in your home market versus being, I guess, scattered, so to speak?
We have about 11 here in our main office, and then the rest of them are working remote.
Okay. And how long ago was it that you really started to aggressively put people in those other major markets versus building the team up at home?
Sure. I think we started about 2011. That was kind of when we got our first remote agent in a market that was about 45 minutes away.
Okay, very cool. So it started off slow with something that they could probably still come into the office or be part of the culture in person if they wanted to, which is where a lot of guys get started. So give us a sense of the numbers for last year. I briefly mentioned the size, but what does that translate to volume, and what's your average price there in your most of your markets?
Yeah, so we did just over 200 million. Our average price point's like $350,000 in our market. Yeah.
Very cool. And so let's dig into the lead generation a little bit, and then we'll kind of go off on a few tangents from there. So give us an idea of, especially the home team. What are you guys' strengths? What do you really put your focus on when it comes to lead gen?
Well, we are, we're a big prospecting machine. So, we focus pretty heavily on expired, canceled, for sale by owners. We do a ton of radio. We do a lot of TV. Those are essentially our main pillars of business. Kind of those prospecting facets, and then also some TV and radio mixed in.
Gotcha. Yeah, and let's so I think the natural question that comes up is that as you've expanded and you have more agents maybe outside than you have inside, because it seems like it's split half and half, and a lot of agents are probably working solo, or maybe they're working a market where there's one or two other agents with them in that same market. Obviously, they're not getting together. There's no boiler room. I mean, they're essentially all working from home and kind of reporting in. So has the culture kind of changed at all, or do those outside agents prospect about as much as your home agents? Is there any difference there as the team has grown and spread out?
Sure. So the way that we're organized and we're structured, we have an inside sales team, and what they do is they generate the leads for our agents who are out there in the field. So, okay. They're in here prospecting, calling FSBOs, calling expireds, buyer leads, I mean, the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, our agents out in the field, they're so busy with those appointments, those opportunities, and those follow-ups that, they're not doing a ton of prospecting.
Gotcha. Very, very cool. Phenomenal. And that's and you mentioned this before we actually went on the air, but you've been doing that for a long time. I mean, before most other people had really heard of the ISA model.
Yeah, so we've been doing it since 2008, so about 10 years now.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, so I'm curious before we get into other things, and Greg, I'm sure you're chomping at the bit, but I'm curious before we go there. I know, I can see you writing furiously.
Yes, I am writing.
So, Aaron, just real quick, break down exactly how your ISAs are, because obviously they're doing prospecting, both cold and what you would call like warm inbound response, or whatever you want to call it, off of radio, TV, stuff like that. How is that structured? Are they setting the appointments and then compensated by bonusing on appointments, and then how are you kind of essentially how is the model built so that you ensure that the agents, if they're really relying on those ISAs to book quality appointments, how do you make sure those are quality appointments?
Yeah. So, we give them an hourly, they get paid hourly. They also get a bonus, they get a bonus structure where, we actually track how many appointments they set for every hour that they work. And we have a full scale, that, when after you hit so many appointments, you get a bonus. The appointments have to show up. They have to, in order to qualify, we call them qualified appointments and unqualified. So a qualified appointment is going to be somebody who we're meeting with a decision maker. They're there, ready, willing, and able to talk to us about selling their house or buying a house. They've gone through a series of questions that our inside sales team is, has been trained to ask. And as long as they meet all those requirements, they go into a different bonus tier structure, and they get paid bonuses based on the number of actual qualified appointments they set for the number of hours worked.
Interesting. Okay, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Greg,
Yeah,
what would you like to go?
Well, a couple things. I want to digress just a little bit. 689 sides is fantastic. What was like the last couple of years? Like, what kind of trajectory are you on? Are you, have you built it really big and now you're kind of working out your systems and you're plateauing, and then you're going to have another breakthrough? Did you just have a breakthrough? Where are you in that whole process? Like, what was your deals the last few years?
So the previous year, I think we sold just like 6 and a quarter.
Okay.
So 625. The year before that, we were somewhere in the 500s. I think it's 579, 580. So, we've seen kind of small incremental growth over the last 3 years. Once you hit a certain volume, you're not going from 6 to 1,000. It's small growth, year after year is kind of what we've been doing.
Yeah, the higher you get, it's hard to maintain. Like the 2 years ago when you went, say, in the 500 to toppled 600, you were still in that 20% growth. That's actually really hard to accomplish when you're already doing in the 500s, deals. So we know the percentages actually go down. As you go up, because it's so hard. I found it interesting. I want to dive into the ISA side a little bit, because I think most people think of ISAs as people who are going to now take the initial call when it comes in from Zillow, Realtor.com, their websites. Like I think the industry is kind of looking at, in the general industry looks at the ISA as being somebody who is only responsible for response time, like how quickly they can respond to the lead. I almost look at most people treating an ISA department almost like they're just scrubbers, but you're kind of taking a little bit of a different twist here, and your ISAs seem to be very proactive. You're talking about expireds and withdrawals. How is that working in your favor in terms of your expanding outside of your market? Because what you're doing in that instance is providing listing leads, and you led with that as a conversation versus what majority of everyone's talking about is providing buyer leads. Can you just kind of share a little bit more about that? Because I think this is where a lot of people are failing in their moving into expanded markets.
Really, really good question, Greg, because I've seen it too, especially with a lot of the KW teams who are trying to get into the inside sales model. And a lot of them are using the inside sales team basically like a glorified secretary, right? They're kind of getting the lead. They're just doing a quick scrub and then passing them off to somebody.
Right.
We spend a large majority of our days, working with our inside sales team, training them, making sure that, they're doing all the right things, saying all the right things. They understand, what the market's doing, a little bit, so that they can speak intelligently to the lead enough to get them interested in the company, get them, interested enough in the agent. And so they want the appointment. They want to meet with us. So, we let them, essentially handle the front end of that process. And the thing I think that where a lot of people make a lot of mistakes when it comes to that model is running an inside sales team. Call it what it is, a call center, isn't for everybody. It's its own unique animal. Just because you're good at selling real estate doesn't mean you're going to be good at running an inside sales team or a call center. It's definitely very, very different, from anything else that most people do, because, the typical person in a call center, it's a different type of salesperson. Their incentive is different. Their motivations are different. What you need to train them on is going to be different. So it's its own unique animal, Greg. And you're right. They got to be more than a glorified secretary.
Yeah, what percent of your business, at least the listing side of your business, do you think actually the first touch of that particular lead is through your ISA department versus it actually coming outside from the agent in versus the company down?
98%.
That's fantastic. I don't know about you, Matt, but I haven't heard of anyone doing it that successful when it comes to running an ISA model, focusing on outbound. And I know there's a lot of conversations about, there's plenty of people that are probably listening right now. Oh yeah, I've been doing this and I've been doing that. Look, let me just be transparent. There's not a lot of people doing it successful, period.
Yeah.
This is a successful model. People cannot like my statements. They can like them. It's not really that concerning to me. This is a successful model. So that's pretty impressive. Congratulations on that.
I appreciate it, Greg. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is where it's an interesting, just something to point out, because, and Aaron, this is not the only area that you've got your hands in where it's probably a different entrepreneurial skill set, or where you're able to apply a general entrepreneurial skill set to it, not just selling real estate, because obviously the whole bent of the podcast is about going from agent to entrepreneur, and there's a lot of people that do make that mistake of, oh, I'm good at selling real estate, therefore I'll be good at X. And I think that's what we're seeing with not just the ISA model, but a lot of other things, whether they're getting into coaching or starting other side businesses. Like, there's a lot of things that agents get into doing because they believe that they're good at selling real estate, that they have an entrepreneurial skill set. So tell us a little bit about, like, you've done the call center effectively, but you've also got essentially a digital media agency that you basically built up at first to handle your own stuff and now handles other stuff for small businesses. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I own a digital, it's basically a full service media agency. So it's called Rian Partners Media. We service, all business types. Anybody who, wants to generate leads via pay-per-click SEO, they need a website developed, they want to go on TV, radio, and they want it to actually work effectively. That is, that's what it does. That's what we do. It's been successful. We've helped hundreds of clients in the Northwest and some in other states, with their lead generation and their branding.
Yeah.
How does that evolve? How did that evolve?
Yeah.
Like, what was the progression? You're sitting here, just hammering out, millions and millions of dollars of production, tonning the deals, and all of a sudden you just randomly says, oh, I want to be a media company. It probably didn't just go that way. What was the evolution of that?
Yeah. So, obviously I started the media company to handle our digital, right? To handle our SEO, to handle our pay-per-click, to handle our radio advertising, because what I found getting into that space was a lot of the salespeople, the sales reps who would come in and be your point of contact for either your pay-per-click. And Greg, I'm sure you've ran into this too. The SEO reps or the local radio reps at iHeartMedia or whatever, highly undereducated, not very effective. So I found that through research and trying to figure it out myself, I was able to put together a system that just, it was effective. It worked. I knew the real estate business. I was able to, actually put a program together that worked for me and my business. As I got, more involved in media and digital and broadcast, I met a lot of really talented, high-end people in the business, effective people. And so, I approached them about working with us, in the media space. And as you know, you're always looking for good talent. So I actually hired them to come in and work with us in the digital and broadcast agency. And now they run that, and, I oversee both. But it came back to real estate, really. It was effective in real estate. I ran the business like a business, so I wasn't out there selling houses every day. I wasn't listing houses every day. I wasn't showing properties every day. So I had the bandwidth to be able to take on being able to, start and oversee the media agency also.
Yeah. Matt, one of the things that I did with my own staff, because I have what I'm visualizing here with Aaron is, he's probably running, there's a lot of media going on within his own operation. He's already got staff overseeing it. So if you just look at your staff or that particular department, that department becomes an entity of its own. And just for the listeners out there, one of the ways that I've approached my own company is I've taken every department, let's just say the design department or the social media department, and I've commissioned them to look at their department as if it's a standalone business, and it's got to be profitable on its own. And it's interesting when you start to actually run your departments like they're actually businesses. Aaron turned it into a business, but I think when you just run them like they're actually a standalone business, the performance goes through the roof.
Yeah.
When it comes to the performance of your conversion rates, as well as the amount of money that it's cost, your return, your ROI, because you're going to be watching the money that much better. Because he's got to have his own P&L, so he's going to watch that differently than if he's actually just paying people on payroll and just reaping the benefits internally. I don't know if that makes sense, but just wanted to throw that out there for conversation.
It's interesting, Ryan, because we talked about, the theoretical benefit, which I think it's not just theoretical, it's tangible for you, which is that you've built a skill set, then you turn it into a company that leverages that skill set to sell it into the marketplace. Now, where a lot of people would lose it and not get the benefit they think they're going to get is that when they go and they allow that company to actually be its own thing, it becomes its own entity, and you have to start making independent decisions of what's best for that business, not what's best for how it feeds your real estate team, right? Because you can't just steal the profit, essentially, or operate it at cost to serve the bigger business. So how do you balance those two?
Well, you have to have tight controls in place. You have to have tight controls. You're just like in any business. You're constantly monitoring your P&L. You're seeing what your expense flow is, and really keeping a separate set of books. For both entities, and making sure that you understand what your true costs to doing business for each company are, and profit and all that good stuff. So, just having really tight controls and not having a ton of crossover when it comes to the books or the P&Ls, and just making sure that you stay really tight on that.
Gotcha. Okay. It's really interesting. All right, so let's get back into kind of the overall model, because I think this is something that, it's super unique, and I'm curious kind of your opinion on it, looking back on it now that it's built and it's running. What was it about maybe the skill set that you have and just your own, I guess, internal superpowers of your skill sets and the things that you're good at? What do you think has contributed most to why the model that other people are trying to build or maybe haven't even thought about building, you've been able to actually pull it off successfully?
Well, I think, again, it comes down to, and, this is just like Greg, I think that I'm about to say some stuff that might not be the most popular statements, right? But it's very true. Okay. Just because you're good at selling real estate doesn't mean you should own a business. Just because you're good at selling real estate doesn't mean you're going to be great at everything, right? And that's the number one mistake I see in a lot of the companies out there, especially these companies that push these good realtors to run these teams. And it's just because you're a good realtor doesn't mean you should be running a team. Just because you're a good realtor doesn't mean you can run a call center. And I think that's probably the number one thing is, you really have to treat that call center model, treat those call centers like they are their own business. I'll give you an example. My call center here, it supports my digital and broadcast marketing agency, and it also supports our real estate company. We have staff for both inside of that call center. Okay. And, it's one of our biggest, probably our largest profit center of anything that we do. And, my model and my experience in that, I've owned other businesses in the past, financial services and that kind of stuff. And a lot of my skills and a lot of my aptitude for running a center like that came from those previous industries and those previous companies.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, and by the way, what was the financial services? What was it in your background? What did you own?
Yeah, we did internet banking.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So when it comes to keeping someone in the trend, because it's hard enough to get somebody that has a giant carrot on the end of the stick I mean, if you're talking about an average of 380 and up from there as far as your average price point, if physical and expired to the average agent, that's worth a lot of money. I mean, we're talking about 10, 15 grand in commission maybe. So with that big of a carrot on the end of the stick and knowing how hard it is to get an agent to make that call under the best of circumstances, how do you take someone that's hourly, give them a bonus structure, and plug them into a system that gets them to make those types of calls when the agents don't want to make those types of calls themselves? And we're talking about not your team agents, but average agents.
Yeah. I mean, you got to find the right people to make the calls, right? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there are people out there who are prospecting machines. I have a room full of them, and that's what they do. They're professional prospectors. That's their skill set. My agents who are out there in the field, they're not professional prospectors. They're great relationship people who can close, face to face. They're true outside sales professionals. So, first you got to start with the right people. You got to have the right people in the right roles. And I think that that's probably number one. If you want to run an effective inside sales center or call center, you got to have somebody who enjoys being on the phone, somebody who enjoys making those calls. And you got to tailor the culture, the bonus program. And when I say bonuses, right, you have different incentives to different people. Different things are important. So to some of our inside sales agents, time off is important. To some of our inside sales agents, getting lunch paid for them is important. Cash bonuses. I mean, there's different things that motivate different people. So you have to have a good mix. You got to have the right kind of leadership, in that room and in that department. So there's a combination of things that, you have to work on constantly, and you have to do to make that model run effectively.
What about the transaction management side of it? Because I'm starting to see, this thing unfold for me. I would say that if I was going to describe your business, so far I see it as two components, but I have a feeling there's a third one that we just haven't touched on yet. And you're a marketing company, and I'm not talking about your separate company. I'm talking about your entire enterprise, but more importantly right now, your real estate company, because I'm sure marketing plays a huge role inside of your real estate production.
Yeah.
You're a lead company,
because
98% of the leads are company generated, at least going through the hands of the call center, the ISA department. Now, I'm stressing this point for a reason. If you think about all of the vendors out there that's hustling, creating products to sell to real estate agents, it usually falls in the marketing category or the lead category, like we'll sell you leads, Zillow.
Yeah.
Marketing category, let's just say Boomtown, or websites or Facebook ads, social media. And then there's usually a third vendor out there, or a third category, which is the .loops of the world, like the transaction management. So far, Aaron, you've shared with me that your company your real estate business is a business broken into components called marketing, leads, like a lead company, a marketing company, and I don't know if you do transaction management, but I'm imagining you have to. What are you doing with the transactions? Who's managing that for those agents?
Yeah, so we have listing coordinators. We have transaction coordinators. Our system's built out to where we have the back end support for all of our agents. So listing coordinators that key everything into the MLS, order the signs. I mean, all the little tasks that it takes to get a property up and live on the market. We have a department that takes care of that. Transaction coordination. Once the file's sold, that goes into a transaction coordinator. They manage the transaction all the way to the close, and and they make sure we get our commission check. So, really our agents, their whole responsibility is to show up, give a presentation, close the sale, and then pass the ball. I'm supposing the answer is going to be very good. How well are you at retaining when it comes to your team, teammate agent retention? Yeah. So at the beginning, it was tough. I mean, that. I mean, you've
Sure.
built teams too. It was tough, at the beginning, especially with remote agents, because we had no idea.
Yeah.
We thought just hire an agent, they're going to stay with you forever, right? I mean, that's always the dream. That's what you always think is going to happen. But it definitely wasn't the case at the beginning. Now, once we dialed in the system, once we dialed in what, we needed to do to retain and keep our agents productive and, keep them out in the field and keep them motivated, we probably have about a 92% retention rate with our agents, at least last year.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
And Matt, this is what I find common.
What's
I
that?
find the few people that I know that are running a marketing company, a lead generation company, and a transaction management company, the guys that I know that are doing that, their retention rates are always extremely high. They also tend to be the most profitable companies.
Yeah.
And so one of the reasons why their retention is high is when somebody's actually trying to recruit against him, what are they going to recruit against? What's their value? I'm going to give you leads. He's already doing that. I'm going to do marketing. He's already doing that. I'm going to handle your transactions. He's already doing that. So, he's doing it at such a high level that, he's making it really hard for people to really penetrate, which is good. In other words, he's adding that much value. So for those listeners out there, if you want to do it right, it all comes down to the value that you're adding to your team. Mm-hmm. And this is what it looks like.
Yeah, and Aaron, I'm curious because essentially what you've built is you've built an actual corporate style sales machine, right? So you're generating your own leads, you're doing your own marketing, you're closing the business on the back end, you have everything departmentalized out. So what that allows you to do is build a sales force of people that are relationship builders. They go out there, they close the sale, they do the pay, they pass it on to the next stage. So does that allow you, or has it allowed you to kind of recruit outside the industry and bring in people that are more used to that corporate environment that aren't used to doing all those pieces themselves?
Yeah, 95% of the agents. My top
Love
three agents. My top guy last year. I think he closed $30 million on his own, and he never had any real estate experience.
Yeah.
So, the truth is, we recruit from outside of the industry because, one, if I go and tell some guy who works at Remax that, hey, you're going to come to our organization, you're going to go on 2 to 3 listing appointments a day, you're going to sell, 20 houses a month, and you're going to sell $30 million next year, he's going to look at me like I'm crazy. So, we get them early, we train them the right way, we teach them the right, we give them the right habits, we teach them how to sell real estate the right way within our system, and they're successful.
That's awesome.
So what is the constraint, or what are a couple of the constraints that you see at the level that you're at, where your responsibility is to generate the lead, generate the appointment, and then handle the transaction management? So you're taking a lot more of the responsibility and risk on yourself than a lot of the other team leaders around the country. So what are the constraints on you of growing the business, bringing on more people, attacking more territory? Just what are the constraints to growth for you right now?
Sure. Probably the biggest thing that is stunts our growth essentially, right, is, when you're an independent brokerage, just going through the state requirements, to be able to open offices or be able to do business in other states. That's probably one of the biggest things that kind of pulls us back from being able to expand into some of the other states that we have, on our growth plan. So, that's probably the number one thing. As far as the system itself and the lead generation models and tools and the back end support, it's worked in multiple markets. It's worked here, Seattle, Bellingham, Tacoma. So we know those things are efficient and effective. It's just, right now meeting the state requirements to be able to do business in other states.
All right. Sounds
so
bad.
where are you taking this? Where, what is your, say, 2 to 3 years out? What does it look like for you?
Yeah. So, we've been approached. We've been asked about franchising and being able to, franchise out the model. But, honestly, we're looking at expansion into California. That's one of our big markets. Just that we see the biggest area of opportunity. It's a bordering state to us, and we do business right up to that border today. So California, Idaho, and then probably Nevada. Those are the 3 areas that we're looking at expanding into.
Yeah, and to me, the secret to all this, whether you feel like you have a secret sauce or not, the secret sauce to all of this and growth and all that, it's all predicated on, do you have a superpower for identifying prospecting machines?
Yeah.
Because that really, I mean, it really, that's the, if all the other stuff is just, scaling up marketing, scaling up lead gen, and then getting the bureaucratic restraints out of the way, if that's really the only things that constrain you, it really just comes down to, I'd be interested to get your perspective. Do you believe that you personally are able to identify prospecting machines at a higher level than other people? And I'd be curious to know, like, do you think that's something that you can scale up and find 20, 30, 40 more of them? And like, how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, so I mean, we do it every single day, believe it or not. I mean, just with our growth, inside of our corporate office here in Portland,
Mm-hmm.
we're always growing that inside sales center. We're always growing that prospecting machine. So, we have a set formula that we use, that we know if somebody comes in, we do all the disc assessments. I mean, we do everything, right?
Yeah.
We want to minimize our risk whenever we bring somebody into the organization. So they could go through a series of tests. They go through a series of interviews. We have them read scripts. We have them, almost a role play in an interview. Once they pass all those things, then they're hired, they're brought into the organization. So, we do it every day, to answer your question, Matt. I mean, we do it every day. We're constantly looking for talent. And, the truth is right now in our inside sales team, we probably have 10 empty seats that we need to fill in the next 30 days,
Wow.
so that we can continue to grow this thing.
That's crazy.
I would imagine, that it's also, it probably gets a little bit easier every time you add one additional one, because the system, the environment, the culture, the room itself will train them to a certain level. In other words, if you put all these high level athletes in a room and you start playing a sport with that high level of caliber of athlete, you're probably going to play a little bit better. So if you bring them in and onboard them correctly and then put them in this call center with all the other very skilled callers, they're just going to get better in spite of themselves. You got to have the right hire. But it's like an incubation system. It almost starts to train itself to some degree.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, we have, if you look at our system, they go in and we have trainers, they go in, they train them, in a classroom. Then you do the shadow training inside the call center. And you're right, Greg, right there. I mean, that's where they're seeing people perform at a high level. They're seeing them set appointments. They're seeing them talk to buyers and sellers and convert leads and do all that stuff. So it does. I mean, after you get it going and you have 15, 20 people in there, doing it, it does. It makes it a lot easier because they can go in there. They pick up on things too. They're bright. They're bright salespeople. They're going to pick up on, what the top producers are doing, what they're saying, how they're saying it, and how they're setting.
Love it. Yeah. And Greg, I'm curious, just from your perspective, knowing what you now know about Aaron, what position he's in, the skill sets, the superpowers that they have. What would you take if you were in that position, if you wanted to grow and expand out, whether you would expand geographically? I'm very curious just to get your perspective on how you would grow and what you would take as the next step.
Yeah, and this is not to really to coach him because I don't know the ins and outs of everything that he's doing, but I would start looking at not only state, but in every current state that I'm in, I would start looking at market share per zip code. And I would start, almost going towards each zip code, looking at what my market share is, looking at what I feel like the potential market share could be, and then deploy plans, individual plans for each zip code, and just make sure that I'm maximizing my total market share in the most localized area I could be in. Now, that doesn't mean stay in one town. That might just be the whole state. So, Aaron may already be doing that, but that's one thing that comes to my mind is I'd be really looking at zip codes if that's appropriate way. There might be so many zip codes, it might be too many, but so it might be sections of cities and cities themselves. I just keep looking at that. And then I would look at the competition. I'd look and see, learn that competition and figure out who's calling expires and who's not calling expires and FSBOs. There's markets probably all around us where the level of play is so low. And, meaning that there's very few people, hitting those types of pillars. I'd really start to look for those opportunities, little pockets that people are neglecting and go in really hard.
How would you get a sense of how good other companies are at prospecting and closing FSBOs and expireds?
Well, what I would really be doing is number one, I'd learn the number of agents. So in most markets, there's not a lot of 100 deal producers. In my market,
Mm.
and I've got 5 in my office, but in most markets, you're not going to see that many 100 deal producers. Then,
Okay.
but you will ever see that. You'll always see this person that's probably doing, say, maybe 400 deals as a team or something like that. And then you look at and they're heavily into Zillow, they're heavily into radio, and they're heavily into billboards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we know that they're not likely. Aaron's rare that you're going to be into that type of media, and you're an outbound machine too.
Mm-hmm.
Usually people are not, they're either moving towards a lot of advertising and media and stay away from outbound. He's unique in the sense he's doing both.
Yeah.
You could almost make an assumption that people that are really heavy in the advertising world are probably not doing business too much on outbound, and if they are, it's just centers of influence. So you start to look, you'll see just in agent rankings, you can start to figure things out. Then you go in and take those top agents, not the ones that we know are advertisers, and start digging in and figuring out exactly how they're doing their business. We can all figure out how our competition's doing business, whether we get on
I was
Google,
thinking my first
whether
thought
we make a
was,
few phone calls.
yeah.
Somebody like Aaron can do that pretty easily.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking maybe going back and you pull old expireds for 3, 4, 5 years out and just have a VA research them and see who they relisted with, and then just sort them by who took the most. That might give you a sense of direct, just like who's really good at going after expireds. But I was just curious about that.
Yeah.
All right, that's awesome. And first of all, Greg, you're the only one I've ever heard talk about per zip code market share. That's really, really interesting, which I know that's how your brain works, because you maximize like your local market area. And Aaron, you talked about, like not drinking the Kool-Aid. Everybody doesn't have to start a team, and every team leader doesn't have to expand. You know what I'm saying? I think you're unique in the fact that you have a proven entrepreneurial skill set that's bigger than selling real estate. You've proved it in several other ways, and so it's not like you have a proven model that you can move into other areas, and you have the skill set to pull it off.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. It's all about the lead generation. I'll tell you that. If you have leads, and you know how to generate leads, it translates into a ton of different areas and different businesses.
Yeah. Just going really far back, how did you first get into that? What was some of your initial training, coaches, mentors, when you first started cutting your teeth in the industry?
Well, I worked a lot. I mean, I think we both did. Greg, if I remember right, I worked a lot with Mike and Jay over at Kinder Reese.
Yeah.
So back in the day,
very well.
Yeah, that was kind of the training that I took. I mean, they were huge in opening my mind to making that transition from a single agent to a team and actually running a business. So, that was big. I mean, I've done a few things. I've done Mike Ferry. I've done, the MAPS coaching when I was at KW. But by far, probably the turning point for me was, getting involved with guys like you, Greg, and getting involved with Mike and Jay and seeing what they did to run their business and picking up on some of that stuff.
Yeah, I heard just a few things in your language, and I felt like we probably hung out with some of the same people. Just some of the words that you used, that's
small group.
Yeah,
that's right.
It is.
Well, hey, Aaron, this has been awesome, and I know we could spend 3 or 4, 10 hours more with you today, but we do need to wrap it up. So let people know we have an idea. Basically, if you're in a major market all throughout Oregon and Washington, so what is the best way to kind of reach out, connect with you on a personal level, but then also if people have referrals for the Northwest, how do they get in touch with the right person who can get them to the right agent that's in that area?
Yeah. We actually have a line dedicated just to that. So give us a call, 503-343-1666. There are people on standby waiting to take any referrals. You'll get a live person who, can get you to the right people. You can email us, info@therryangroup.com. Ryan is always spelled with an I, so therryangroup.com. You can also check us out online. Therryangroup.com is our web domain.
Awesome. Very cool. And Greg, same question for you.
I keep it simple as always. Just shoot me an email to my private email at gregharrelson@gmail. And what I really prefer is if somebody has a question or if I can do anything to help them out is private message me via Facebook. That seems to be the most convenient way for me to respond.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Same here, and same for a lot of us that are in and around real estate. Definitely Facebook and Facebook Messenger is a great way to connect and reach out. Guys, as far as the podcast, make sure to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or Stitcher. If you've got your Apple device, go to the Apple Podcast app. Make sure to search Level Up Podcast, and you will find us there. You can subscribe. You can leave a rating and a review if you like it. And thank Aaron for being on the show and kind of let us know some of the things that you're pulling out, what you liked about this particular conversation, and future conversations. We'll steer them towards that. If you guys have any questions, obviously you can reach out to any one of us. You can also put them right here in the comments, because we've been live on Facebook this whole time, as we always are. So we always go back and check the comments afterwards. And any questions that we didn't get to live, we make an effort to answer after the fact just by going into the comments right here on the Facebook live feed. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much. Aaron, we appreciate you being here, and all the viewers and listeners for watching and listening. Thank you, guys, and we'll see everybody on the next episode.